Somewhere in the world tonight, a building the size of a mall is drinking a river. No, it's not a factory. It makes nothing you can hold in your hand. It burns the power of a city and the water of a town to feed a single thing, a mind. A machine built by a handful of companies to think for all of humanity. They call it the frontier model, the one big intelligence, and the race to build the largest of them all has become the most expensive undertaking in the history of technology. But there is a question that one great mind cannot answer. What happens to a civilization of 1,000 tongues, 1,000 gods, and 1,000 ways of knowing when it is asked to think through a single foreign mind? Somewhere in the world tonight, a building the size of a mall is drinking a river. No, it's not a factory. It makes nothing you can hold in your hand. It burns the power of a city and the water of a town to feed a single thing, a mind. A machine built by a handful of companies to think for all of humanity. They call it the frontier model, the one big intelligence. And the race to build the largest of them all has become the most expensive undertaking in the history of technology. But there is a question that one great mind cannot answer. What happens to a civilization of 1,000 tongues, 1,000 gods, and 1,000 ways of knowing when it is asked to think through a single foreign mind? The conventional map of the artificial intelligence world has two roads on it. The first road is America's. Build the largest possible model, pour in every available watt and every available liter of water, strain the electric grid of an entire region to answer a single question. Spend whatever it takes. The second road is China's. Build the same kind of model but cheaper. Squeeze comparable power from less compute and constrained silicon. The lesson the world learned the hard way, that efficiency is itself a weapon. And the story ends here, right? Two roads, with India cast as a straggler, too poor for the American path and not yet clever enough for the Chinese one. That map is wrong. And the mistake hides the most interesting strategic decision any major power has made about this technology. Because China is not on a different road from America, you see. China is on the same road, driving a more efficient car. India is betting against the road itself. When America builds the one big model and China builds the one efficient model, India is building towards 1,000 small ones, each tuned to a language, a region, a task, or a community. This is not a smaller monolith. It's a different idea of what intelligence should be. The technical case was made by the man who runs the oldest computing company in the world, the IBM. The man's name is Arvind Krishna, the CEO. Arvind Krishna believes the current race to build ever larger language models has, at best, a very small chance of leading directly to the true artificial general intelligence, or the AGI. IBM has therefore built its enterprise AI strategy around different premise. Most real-world problems do not require a trillion-parameter general-purpose model. They require smaller, specialized models that understand a particular domain exceptionally well, whether it is medicine, manufacturing, finance, or software development. In Krishna's view, depth of expertise often matters far more than breadth of knowledge. The Indian national case was made by the engineer who runs India's digital state, Ashwini Vaishnav, who's the Minister of Electronics and Information Technology, as well as Information and Broadcasting. India's sovereign mission, Ashwini Vaishnav has said again and again, builds both large and small models, with small ones trained on the Indian data to hold a linguistic and cultural precision no global model possesses. Ashwini Vaishnav has stated it plainly. Nearly 95% of real-world AI workloads can be handled smoothly by smaller domain-specific models. A 7 to 50 billion parameter model is more than enough for almost every enterprise, municipal, or medical workflow on Earth. Think about what this means for India's infrastructure reality. Giant LLMs require a pristine, constant, cloud-heavy connection. India's infrastructure is uneven. By investing in SLMs through initiatives like the India AI Mission and Bharat Gen framework, India is building models that can run locally on an edge server in a village common service center, on a local railway station kiosk, or right inside a smartphone, completely offline if necessary. By deploying thousands of specialized task-focused SLMs, India achieves something a centralized frontier model never can: hyper-localization. You don't build one prestige engine, you build an army of them. For example, an SLM trained exclusively on local agricultural and geospatial data called the AgriStack that India has to predict crop yields with 88% accuracy. An SLM trained on Indic bird dialects to help rural citizens navigate welfare and ration schemes in their own native tongue. An SLM like Servam-1, a compact 2 billion parameter model that seamlessly handles 10 major Indian languages at a fraction of the cost of a ChatGPT API call. Bypassing the brute force resource war, India is not lagging behind. It's insulating itself from the global silicon volatility and energy dependency while building an inclusive, democratic stack tailored directly to its unparalleled human diversity. Two engineers, one running the largest enterprise technology on Earth and one running the largest digital public infrastructure on Earth, arriving at the same instinct from opposite ends. The future is not one model to rule them all, it is many models, each fit to its own purpose. Krishna's and Vaishnav's model of SLMs is usually defended on cost. But let us be honest, cost is the shallowest version of the case. The real case is about two things money barely touches. The first is the planet itself. The second is a human civilization. Start with the planet, because the numbers have become very hard to look away from. Training a single mid-size open model, just one, has been estimated to release around 400 tons of carbon. This is more than 80 years of electricity for an average household. And to drink nearly 3,000 kiloliters of fresh water, roughly the lifetime water use of 24 human beings. And that is only the training, the act of building it only once. The heavier burden is the inference, the act of actually answering billions of times a day, forever. A single medium-sized data center can drink as much water as two 18-hole golf courses, and credible projections now place America data centers near 1/10 of the entire national electricity demand by the end of this decade. So let us talk about some dimensions here. As Arvind Krishna has said, equipping a 1 gigawatt AI data center today costs roughly $80 billion. A company planning 20 to 30 gigawatts of AI infrastructure would therefore have to commit around $1.5 trillion in capital expenditure. Krishna estimates that announced global AI projects now total 100 gigawatts, implying roughly $8 trillion of investment, comparable to the combined GDP of Japan and Germany put together. At that scale, investors would need approximately $800 billion in annual profit simply to service the financing cost. Forget about the profit. The physical footprint is equally staggering. A 1 gigawatt AI campus consumes about 8.8 terawatt hours of electricity each year, roughly the annual electricity use of Nepal, Bolivia, or a metropolitan region, say like the Greater Atlanta. A 20 gigawatt build-out would consume 175 terawatt hours annually, compared to the entire annual electricity consumption of countries like Romania or New Zealand. Water requirements are similarly immense. A single hyperscale AI data center can consume up to 5 million gallons or 19 million liters of water every day for cooling. Over a year, that approaches 7 billion liters, roughly equivalent to the annual municipal water consumption of a city with 100 to 150,000 residents, depending on the local usage patterns. These figures exclude the additional water consumed by power plants generating the electricity, meaning the total water footprint of AI is substantially larger than we can assume. This is what the trillion-dollar build-out actually is. It is not just capital, it is rivers, reservoirs, power plants, an entire second industrial metabolism raised from ground to feed this entire big monolith. Now ask what it would mean for India to enter that race on those terms. India is among the most water-stressed large nations on earth. Hundreds of millions of its people already live with chronic scarcity. Its power grids, which have been vastly improved, still strain at its peak. To build American kind of intelligence on Indian soil would be to import a burden the country can least afford. To bid against, say, Arizona and Virginia for water and power in order to run a foreign paradigm at home. It would be to make the monolith's thirst India's problem. And this is where the argument about resources becomes the argument about sovereignty. A nation that enters a resource war it cannot win does not become powerful. It becomes a hostage to the price of energy, to the availability of water, to the capital that pours the concrete, and to whoever sits further up that chain. Restraint here is not weakness, you see. It is a refusal to be captured by the powers. The small model is a way out of that trap. A model tuned to one task can run on a fraction of the energy. A well-built compact model can match and sometimes beat a giant on the specific job it was made for, while running on a phone or an institutional server at the edge far from any mega data center. Researchers, including the major UNESCO study, have found that shifting to small, targeted models can cut the energy of a given task by up to 90%. With no loss of accuracy. At one children's hospital, a carefully tuned small model outperformed the giants at emergency triage, while actually fitting the clinical workflow the giants had disrupted. The pattern repeats across field after field. For the overwhelming majority of what a society truly needs, the monolith, the large language models, they are an aircraft carrier sent to cross a river. There is an honest objection here, and it is worth facing directly. Efficiency does not automatically lower consumption. Cheaper, lighter tools get used far more. A more efficient steam engine, history has showed us, burn more coal in the end, not less. A billion small models running across billion-person society is not free. The small model approach solves a problem that the giant frontier models cannot. Instead of concentrating computing into a few massive campuses that demand enormous amounts of electricity and water, it distributes intelligence across thousands of smaller deployments. The load can be shared across enterprises, edge devices, local servers, and off-peak capacity, making AI far less dependent on gigantic infrastructure. For a country that must expand digital capability without placing unsustainable pressure on its energy and water resources, distributed intelligence is not simply more efficient, it is inherently more resilient. Now let us go deeper. Numbers that discuss the carbon burden. A single general-purpose model designed to serve everyone inevitably reflects a world on which it was trained. To understand everything, it must learn from the largest body of digital knowledge available. In practice, that means data dominated by English language content and by society that have produced the greatest share of the world's digital text. The result is not necessarily bias in the political sense, but an intelligence whose assumptions, cultural references, and ways of reasoning naturally reflect the environments that generated most of its training data. And then it answers every question in every language for every culture from the gravitational center of that training mass. It speaks Tamil through an English mind. It reasons about an Indian village through habits absorbed from American common threads. It is by its very architecture a homogenizing engine. Its entire function is to compress the staggering variety of human expression into a single average and to pull every particular thing back towards that average. The monolith does not just serve a homogenized world, it manufactures one. Every answer it gives nudges the person who asked a little closer to the mean it was built from. And this is exactly the wrong instrument for India. To understand why, you have to take India seriously, not as a large market that happens to speak many languages, but as a civilization whose fundamental structure is plurality itself. 22 constitutionally recognized languages, beneath them hundreds of living tongues, thousands of dialects, each carrying its own literature, its own idiom, its own way of holding the world, and beneath those, a density of distinct traditions with no parallel anywhere on earth. Systems of medicine, of law and custom, of farming, mashed to one particular soil and one particular climate and weather, of devotion expressed through one particular village deity, exchanging across the span of a single district itself. India is not one thing rendered in different languages. It is many things that learned over millennia to live together without dissolving into one. To flatten all of that into a single averaged model is not a technical compromise. It's a small act of erasure performed 1 billion times a day. Each time someone asks one great mind a question and receives the average of humanity where they needed the particular truth of their own place. That is the problem. The proliferating ecosystem of small models is the answer that fits the question. A model trained on Bhojpuri holds Bhojpuri. Instead of approximating it through Hindi, through English, a model built for one agricultural zone speaks to that farmer's actual soil. A model versed in one tradition, one craft, one custom, preserves it in its specificity instead of dragging it towards a homogenized world shaped into a blur. The architecture of the intelligence comes to mirror the architecture of the society. Many small rooted minds working together where they must, staying distinct where they should. This is not the second best substitute for a great model India cannot afford. It is the correct representation in digital world of what India actually is. And now the resource argument and the diversity argument reveal themselves as the same argument, seen from two different sides. The monolith LLMs centralize its hardware, demanding that power and water pool in a few vast sites, and it centralizes its cognition, demanding that meaning pool in a single averaged mind. Centralized energy and centralized thought are the same shape. They are the same thing. India's instinct to refuse both is actually one instinct, not two. There is a resonance here that runs deeper than engineering, and it would be a failure of nerve to leave that unsaid. A civilization's technologies tend to carry the shape of its deepest beliefs. The dominant Western religious inheritance is built on the insistence of the one being the truth, a single exclusive truth, a universal claim that admits no rival, the conviction that what is true must be true everywhere for everyone in exactly the same form. Transport that instinct into technology and it produces almost inevitably the universal model. The one model that aspires to be the single mind for all minds. The monolithic frontier model is in its very ambition a monotheism of cognition, a one God model towards which all questions must flow and from which all answers must descend. The dharmic inheritance is built on the opposite intuition, a comfort with the many, the deity each devotee chooses for themselves, the many schools of thought that contend without anyone needing to destroy the others, the conviction that the same truth wears many forms and is reached by many paths, that the universal lives through the particular rather than by erasing it. A civilization at ease with many gods, many philosophies, many valid ways has a natural technological expression, many models, each true to its own domain, contending and cooperating without collapsing into one. The pantheon of small models is not a metaphor borrowed to decorate an engineering choice. It is the same ancient instinct, the comfort with plurality, finding a new medium to speak through it. I want to make this claim carefully. The point is not small models are somehow holy. Point is that the deepest software any civilization runs is its answer to the oldest question: the one or the many? And that answer quietly shapes the kind of machine a people find it natural to build. America builds towards the one big one because its civilizational software trends that way. India builds towards the many because its software always has done that way. The technology is downstream of the metaphysics, and India's metaphysics has been doing this again and again and again, the same architecture for thousands and thousands of years. The strongest proof that this third road is real and that India can travel it is that India has already built exactly this architecture once before in a different layer and won the world with it. India's signature digital achievements are, every one of them, victories of many small interoperable over the one big whole. UPI, for example, is not a single payment monolith. It is a thin shared protocol sitting over many banks and many apps, none of them dominant, all of them interoperable. And it now processes more transactions than any centralized system on earth, precisely because it refused to become the one big one. Aadhaar is an identity layer that thousands of services build upon. The Open Commerce Network of India carries the same idea into retail. Bhashini, for example, carries that same instinct into language itself, a protocol for many models across 22 different languages rather than one model that pretends to speak them all. India's entire digital doctrine is the deliberate choice of protocols over platforms, of the many interoperable participants over the one large owner. The small model strategy is that same doctrine, carried up one more layer, from payments to identity and language into cognition itself. Many small models, each rooted in its own domain, connected through shared standards, owned by no single power. The AI architecture of India can also be seen as, say, UPI for the mind itself, which means this road is not a leap into the dark for India. It is a country playing once again to the exact strength it has already proven at world-leading scale. The monolith asks India to win at the one game it has always lost, the capital-heavy, resource-heavy, single champion game. The pantheon, or the distributed model, asks India to win at the one game it has already mastered, the protocol-driven, plural, interoperable game. Be deeply suspicious of any strategy that asks a nation to abandon its proven strength and adopt its proven weakness. This one asks the opposite. 1,000 small models left scattered would be a library, not a power. The strategy completes itself with one layer above. The complement to the pantheon of models is a conductor, an orchestrator that knows which model to summon for which task, that routes a hard question across many specialists and weaves their answers into one. Japan, for example, has already shown what this looks like through its latest model, a small conductor model coordinating a whole pool of other models. It is the one piece India has not yet built as part of the sovereign infrastructure. And it is a piece that turns a collection of tools into a single sovereign intelligence. And here is the honest boundary of this whole argument, which makes it stronger, not weaker. The bet is not India should build only small models and walk away from the frontier model itself. There remains tasks where nothing but a large and powerful model will be needed. Frontier scientific reasoning, national security, the kind of offensive cyber capability that in a single afternoon in June of 2026, United States judged so dangerous it switched off access most advanced model for the entire world, including India. I'm talking about Mythos from Claude. For those rare and decisive tasks, India needs at least one frontier-class model of its own, a sovereign floor that cannot be taken away. So the design is precise. The small models are the mass strategy, the daily intelligence of a civilization. The single great model is a thin strategic reserve, the weapon kept in the armory for the rare day it is truly needed. America has done the reverse. It made the monolith the whole of its strategy and starved everything else. India is putting the many at the center and keeping the one as insurance and specifically for the national security. And there is a final force for this argument now. The three roads, only this one is something India can give to the world. And the part of the world that needs it most looks actually like India, not like Silicon Valley. The global south I'm talking about. The global south is plural, multilingual, constrained in water and power and capital. Its nations have many tongues and little to spare for the Gulf Coast data centers. The American monolith is not a thing they can own. It is a dependency that they can only rent with the off switch held in a foreign capital. The Chinese version is the same dependency with a different landlord, but a stack built from small, rooted, efficient models conducted by a sovereign orchestrator speaking the local language, running on modest hardware, is something a nation can actually own and adapt and run for itself. It is actually an equivalent of the UPI export story applied to intelligence. And India is one country which is positioned to offer that, because India is the one major power building it, and the one whose own diversity makes it the most national proving ground. So this is the third road. The choice to refuse a resource war that would make India a hostage, to refuse a homogenizing machine that would flatten the most plural civilization on earth into a global average, and to build instead many small rooted minds or models that match what India can actually sustain, where India must be frugal, plural where India is plural, distributed where India is distributed, and it can be offered to half of the humanity that the monolith LLMs were never built to here. America is building one mind for the world. India is building the world a way to keep its many minds. Of the two, only the second one was ever India's to build, and it may yet prove to be the wiser thing to have built at all. Thank you. Jai Hind.